Now I'll invite second speaker, Ameya Joshi. What's new about allogliptins?
And at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Unnikrishnan sir for this magnificent conference that he organizes every year and also extends an invitation of faculty to me. Uh, I think every time a patient comes to your OPD, he will always ask that, doctor, what's new in diabetes? Can you do something new about me? Is there anything more economical? Is there anything more safe? We also know that India is a diabetes capital. We have maximum number of or a huge burden of diabetes patients, millions and millions of them. If you try to look at what is so special about our patients, one thing that strikes our mind is that we see patients at the age of 25 years, 30 years who have diabetes. We see patients 40 or 45 years of age getting a coronary artery disease or a cerebrovascular disease. The amount of years that are lost due to diabetes in Indian population is huge. Our patients are also the patients who will come in a Mercedes and crib about the cost of the consultation as well as the cost of the medications. And if you prescribe a new medication, the question will always be asked, is it safe? No. And therefore, we also have to spend a lot of time in counseling the patients, make them understand what is going on, and also, I am sure all of us present over here always give their best to patiently listen, hear out the patient, as well as do our level best for the patient care. One of the peculiar thing about our diabetic patients has been a magnificent response to this class of medications called as gliptins. Gliptins typically lower the A1C by 0.6 to 0.8%. In Indian population, almost all the gliptins had a better therapeutic effect, lowering the A1C by around 1 to 1.2%. The reason probably because is the underactive, problems with the DPP-4's incretin axis, but more so the carbohydrates in our diet, which make it important to have a glucose dependent insulin secretion. What are specific things about the gliptins? They can be used as a monotherapy or add-on. They have superb safety. They have a cardio-neutral profile. And yes, we respond to gliptins better than other races. So let us start with a case, and we'll be listening out to this 45-year-old gentleman who is about to be discharged after hospitalization for acute coronary syndrome. He has been diabetic since couple of years. He has a strong family history of diabetes and ischemic heart disease. His story has been of grief due to weight gain, hunger. He says that I feel tired at any time of the day. I feel hungry. Eating gives me satisfaction. I am tired, lethargic. When he got hospitalized, his fasting was 236 and post meal of 288, A1C was raised. He was diagnosed 2 years ago. At that time, glucose was 180 and 220. He was overweight and he was started on glimepiride and metformin twice a day. He was very happy that on 10th day, his glucose level was absolutely normal. The story started getting worse after a month. The glucotoxicity was broken, the medicine was continued, and then he started realizing that after 3-4 hours, he's feeling hungry, he's feeling tired. And so he went back, and that time the glucose levels were occasionally high, and he was told that, okay, you are getting occasional hypos, you try to eat multiple number of times, eat slowly, have small snacks along. What that exactly translated it into was that his A1C continued to worsen. His doses were increased. He gained weight. That was a disaster. His BMI shot up. His cholesterol level started worsening. He got neuropathy, and then he landed up with us with an acute coronary syndrome. His evaluation also revealed a slightly raised TSH 3 months ago. He was started on Thyronorm. I think that could be debated because maybe at that point you would like to look at few more things, but I wanted to show a real life case scenario because the patient said that my situation is worsening day by day. And it is the hypothyroidism that is causing damage to me, because everyone in and around him told that you have thyroid, no, so this will happen. And so he tried to blame his diabetes and cholesterols for the thyroid. And we had a challenge of giving him a prescription, controlling his glucose, removing his negativity, and help him live a productive life. And then let us try to look at what all things cross your mind. Obviously, cost is the first. Agree it or don't agree to it. We don't want him to gain weight. He was not keen on multiple injections because he was the breadwinner. We want to minimize insulin resistance. We want to minimize effort, because non-compliance starts when treatment is more intricate. His postprandial has to be under control, and hypoglycemia needs to be avoided. These are the 7 points that are listed in Williams endocrinology textbook when you decide to choose a therapy for diabetes. But what is more important is that we need to consider the complications. This patient actually becomes a case of diabetes with coronary artery disease, and so the regime was formulated for him. Obviously, he was given SGLT2 inhibitor. He refused for a GLP-1 receptor agonist because of the cost as well as fear for injections. He was given metformin, a basal insulin, and a gliptin. The gliptin that he was prescribed was alogliptin. It was launched by Takeda in 2013. It is US FDA approved and available there. It is once a day gliptin, which is highly selective for DPP4 and has been approved not only as a single tablet but also in combination with metformin and pioglitazone. Alogliptin has all the properties that a typical good gliptin has. It is effective, 0.6 to 0.8% reduction in A1C. It is weight neutral, as well as it does not cause hypoglycemia by its own. So why alogliptin was chosen? And I promise you that at end of the talk, we'll look at all the 7 points plus the line in the end and justify the selection of alogliptin. What we are going to examine also in next 10 minutes is about a study called as EXAMINE. It was a first cardiovascular outcome trial. US FDA made it mandatory that cardiovascular outcome trials will have to be done for all diabetic medications after the rosiglitazone fiasco. So what are these trials? A large number of patients who are at very high risk of getting a cardiovascular event are recruited. They are followed up for a specific period of time. One group is given the test medicine, and another group also continues to receive standard of care, and cardiovascular protective strategies which are known are equally given to both the groups. And then it is observed which group has more cardiovascular adverse outcomes, mortality or morbidity terms. The typical outcome that is measured is a 3-point MACE. You can add additional things like renal outcomes or heart failure hospitalization. And then every diabetic medication went through this, what I can say, Agni Pariksha of a cardiovascular outcome trials. The first cardiovascular outcome trial to be started and completed was the EXAMINE trial. After that came SAVOR-TIMI, and there is an interesting twist to it. I'll cover in next half of the talk. And then came EMPA-REG, which actually gave us positivity, and then came TCOS, and then so on and so forth of them. All of us continue to listen to them at least one every month in new meetings, and I think every year at least 4 or 5 CVOTs are published. And then in this particular study, EXAMINE trial, almost 6,000 patients were recruited across the globe. 400 happened to come from India. These patients were given either a alogliptin plus standard of care or placebo plus standard of care, and they were followed up at a close interval till the end of the study. The patients included were type 2 diabetics, and each one of them had an acute coronary syndrome. I'll come to this statement, why this statement is important and has a bearing on our patient. And they were not well controlled. Obviously, type 1 diabetic patients and unstable patients were excluded. CKD patients with dialysis were excluded. And this was the study design. And then you got the needed endpoints which are similar in both the groups. 20% there was a discontinuation rate for ABC reasons. And what was looked at was the primary endpoint, that is death from cardiovascular causes, non-fatal myocardial infarction, non-fatal stroke. Remember, this was the first CVOT. It stuck to FDA guidelines only, no additional extrapolations which came after the EMPA-REG, and a simple design, good to understand. There were other factors that were looked at, like adverse events in the two groups, need for urgent revascularization due to unstable angina, any other exploratory endpoints, and the adverse events like hypoglycemia, angioedema, pancreatitis, cancer, which were relevant. The populations of the two groups, allogliptin group and placebo, were almost matched. Similar age groups, similar male-female ratios, similar A1Cs to enter, similar degree of therapies that were given, statins as well as non-statin cardioprotective therapies. They had similar comorbidities. And then it was looked at that how many patients in the allogliptin group had a primary or a secondary endpoint, and how many patients in the placebo group had a primary or a secondary endpoint. And you can see that both groups achieved a nearly reasonable HbA1c and had a similar endpoints in terms of cardiovascular death, though numerically lesser in allogliptin group, the cardiovascular deaths, but not statistically significant. Similar incidences of non-fatal MI and non-fatal stroke, as well as the secondary MACE endpoints. Obviously, the other adverse events were looked at, and they were also similar in allogliptin group and the placebo, including other non-cardiovascular deaths or mysterious deaths, hypoglycemia incidences, and all. And obviously, this is a long list and we will streamline it, but this includes the major outcomes like angina pectoris, myocardial infarction, cardiac failure, but plus also minor things like UTI, respiratory infections, pneumonia, bronchitis, pancreatitis, hypoglycemia, ketosis, and all the points, the groups were almost similar. And then we dig deep into it and look at our primary outcome, which was absolutely neutral. That means that allogliptin was cardio-safe gliptin. That is what was the conclusion of the study or the examine trial, that allogliptin was not found to be associated with an excess of cardiovascular events in type 2 diabetic patients with recent acute coronary syndrome as compared to placebo. And then you look at all the three trials of gliptins or DPP-4 inhibitors. Obviously, there is a linagliptin trial that is missing here. Savur-Timi, Examine, and TCOS. Examine was the first one. And then you look at cardiovascular deaths. Numerically, best ratio is seen with allogliptin, though statistically all are cardio neutral. Also, if you see the patient recruitment, Examine at essentially all patients who had acute coronary syndrome, whereas Savur-Timi and TCOS had a mix of both. And other endpoints like unstable angina and all-cause mortality, the numbers are comparable, but there was a but over here, because Savur-Timi gave a wrong signal. It showed that hospitalization for heart failure was increased amongst patients who were prescribed saxagliptin, and that practically killed saxagliptin off the globe market. So what happened? Then obviously there were fingers raised, and it was mandatory that allogliptin or the data of Examine trial is rescreened. So there was a re-examination of an Examine trial to know whether allogliptin is indeed associated with increased risk of cardiac failure. And allogliptin came out in flying colors, showing that there was no difference in the risk of heart failure amongst allogliptin group as well as the placebo group. And then in 2016 there came warnings for gliptins, which said that in general along gliptins you should be worried about heart failure. And obviously none of us prescribes gliptins in class 3 or class 4 heart failure. So there was again a re-examination of an Examine trial by this paper from Cavender, published in 2018. Similar papers were also published for sitagliptin. And it was found that there were 1100 CV events and additional 666 recurrent events over a median 18 months follow-up, and there were no differences in regard to total number of events in patients treated with allogliptin or placebo. Furthermore, there was no difference in types of events. It was important because sevortemy was also cardio-neutral, but the types of events saxagliptin was found to be worse. And this data supports the CV safety of allogliptin in patients who are at increased risk of cardiovascular events. And then you try to look at the algorithm, because obviously when you are going to prescribe, you are going to refer to this algorithm. And obviously the patient was given SGLT2 inhibitor. The patient was given an option of GLP-1 RA, which he did not want. And later on, metformin obviously was a part of the regime. While choosing a gliptin, we tried to look at, it is said that avoid type 2 diabetes patients in setting of heart failure, choosing agents demonstrating CV safety, obviously SGLT2 inhibitors, and in DPP4 inhibitors, and I am reading straight from the ADA EASD, it says you can use DPP4 inhibitors but not saxagliptin in high risk cardiac patients. Obviously basal insulins and SU remain at the bottom. Allogliptin is a US FDA approved highly selective cardio-safe gliptin, now available in India, available in US since 2013. It can be used in CKD with dose adjustments. It can be used in mild to moderate CLD also. Now here comes the catch. Why we selected allogliptin and not sitagliptin or linagliptin? Because the cost of allogliptin is 75% lesser than the cost of sitagliptin and linagliptin in India. So we have a cardio-safe gliptin. I must tell you that teneligliptin and vildagliptin were out because they did not have a cardiovascular outcome trial. Saxagliptin again became out because it was not safe for the heart. So for us remained the first line only to select. And then if you look at the cost, the choice became allogliptin. Allogliptin, which is marketed in India, has been also compared with the parent allogliptin, that is Nesina, and it has fared as good as the parent molecule. So then we come at choosing the gliptin and again look at the 7 criteria plus 1 rider. If we look at the cost, allogliptin, teneligliptin and vilda are cheap. If we look at the weight gain, let us say all are same. Injectables, gliptins are not. Insulin resistance, all are same. Efforts, if you look at once a day versus twice a day, allogliptin, sitagliptin, linagliptin and teneligliptin all are once a day. If you look at postprandial targeting and hypoglycemia avoidance, let us accept that all are practically reasonably same. And then you look at the last one, due consideration has to be given to existing complications. And there, allogliptin, sitagliptin and linagliptin become the correct choice of gliptin for our patient who is a cardiovascular risk patient. We chose allogliptin because reason A, it has a cardiovascular outcome trial. B, EXAMINE trial had 100% patients who had got acute coronary syndrome. And C, it is once a day, so there is minimal effort. And D, the cost of allogliptin was minimum amongst all cardio-safe gliptins. It is once a day and has a cardiovascular trial proven for safety. Also, let us try to have a glance at what allogliptin has. It has got 100% bioavailability. It is a highly selective and specific DPP4 inhibitor. It gives you an optimum reduction in A1C. No risk of hypoglycemia. The risk comes when other agents like SUs or insulin are added. It's weight neutral. Most importantly, cardio safe. So we have only 4 cardio safe gliptins. It can be used in CKD and CLD, but what is best is it is affordable to all Indian diabetic patients, and ADA guideline says in a patient at high cardiovascular risk, use DPP4 inhibitors except saxagliptin. Obviously, teneligliptin, vildagliptin and evogliptin are not marketed in US, so they have not featured in the guideline only. And so these gliptins can be used and may be considered in patients with past history of heart failure or at high risk of acute coronary syndrome. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank all of you for your patient listening.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. I mean, what you said is right. After 40 milligram a day dose of teneligliptin, you can see QT prolongation in susceptibles, it is much more commonly seen as a pharmacological effect if the dose is more than 160. Sitagliptin also in higher doses can cause QT prolongation, which has been seen in doses above 400. And obviously, in looking at the guidelines, which actually earlier used to say that gliptins should be used, SGLT2 inhibitors should be used. Now they are clearly saying gliptin, which is cardio safe, SGLT2 inhibitor, which has a proven cardioprotective effect. So I think we have to absolutely be clear when you are prescribing, especially in high risk patients. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Congratulations for nice presentation.
Thanks, Dr. Ameya Joshi, Dr. Murli Ganguri, Dr. Sadanand Raut, sir. I request you all to move to the Banting Hall for inauguration function.